I'm Tyler. And this is my FZ09. My name is Tyler Ellison, and I kind of got into motorcycles pretty young. My dad owns like 8 of them, and so they've always just been around me in my life. My mother even had one when I was younger, and we all used to ride together, me and my brother and my parents. And yeah, so they've always been in my life. When I was 16, I think it was October of 2015, I got my first motorcycle. It was a 2001 Yamaha V-Star 650. Just this crappy little bike, hardly ran, carbureted, little V-twin, kind of like a fake Harley. But it was nice and kind of got me going, really comfy, low. From there, I took that on a couple road trips, and I figured out that I really liked that. I really liked road tripping and hanging out with all my friends and going for rides down in southern Minnesota on a road that we call Twisty 60. And kind of around late high school, I was deciding that I needed to upgrade because I was really outgrowing that bike. It was pretty slow, and it was kind of, I don't know, it wasn't really my style. And so during that winter, I was trying to decide what bike would really fit me. It was kind of between maybe a DRZ 400 for a supermoto, or maybe an MT-07 or FZ07, you know, a little 2-cylinder, or this, because I like my Yamahas, this FZ09. And if you don't know anything about FZ09s, they are a 3-cylinder, 850cc. I think it's actually like 847. And very, very torquey. They wheelie like nothing else, you know, like first gear, if you pin it, you're going over backwards. Second gear, same thing, honestly. Lots of torque, lots of power. But they're really, really fun. I really like the looks of it. I like the way the tank is angled, everything like that. Yeah, and I love the way it handles. It's a very, very comfortable ride, very, very smooth ride. It is a little bit, not loose through corners, but I don't know, kind of like riding on a cloud a little bit. It's like driving Cadillac through the corners. So the first summer that I had the bike, a buddy Colin and I decided that we wanted to do some more road tripping. And so we planned out a trip to Colorado, specifically Pikes Peak in Colorado, for late summer. I think it was late July, maybe 24th, I think is when we got there. And it was me on this and him on a Harley Davidson Sportster 883. And he was a big dude, so that was a pretty small bike for him. But yeah, we rode out to Colorado. It took us a couple days, a couple pit stops in between, and went up Pikes Peak, and it was absolutely gorgeous. Rode through Estes Park and Rocky Mountain National Park. Very, very gorgeous riding. And that was really the first real big trip that I've ever done on this bike, or really any bike. And it was pretty fun. I didn't have any saddlebags, just had a really big backpack at the time, and that really sucked. And so from there, I decided that I kind of wanted to do more trips. And I decided that I didn't want to wear a big backpack anymore. So I got saddlebags for it, and I got a tank bag for it, and I got a really big backpack again because I couldn't get away from that. And then that next summer, I went on a huge trip. Ended up being 13,000 miles long over the span of about 2 months, completely solo. I rode from Minnesota back to Colorado, then Utah, Wyoming, Montana, Idaho, Washington, all the way down to California, all the way across to Georgia, down to Florida, and back up to Minnesota. All over the span of about 2 months. And it was probably one of the most fun things I've ever done in my life. And I did it on this thing. And it was just me and it, you know? It was pretty fun. And that was probably my biggest road trip. From there, I've done some smaller ones. This last summer, I went to the Black Hills with it. And that was a pretty good time with a few friends. And then later in the summer, August, me and a buddy Kyle trailered our bikes down to Tennessee, where we met up with my dad, and we rode all around Smoky Mountains, did the Tail of the Dragon, you know, saw lots of touristy stuff, zip lining, all that stuff. And on our last day there, very last day, right at the beginning of the last day, me and Kyle went riding out, just 2 of us, down one of our favorite roads that we had found. It's called Pisgah Highway. And it was really early in the morning. It had rained the night before, so it was a little bit damp. And we were ripping through a right-hand corner. I brought it up and did a little wheelie, and brought it down a little bit too late, broke way too hard on the front, and the front end completely washed out from under me. And I kind of sent this thing into a waterfall. And I went off into the ditch. So after I crashed, Kyle went and got my car, and we ended up dragging it out with the tow strap I had, just right here by the fork. And dragged her out, loaded her up on the trailer, and I was really, really sad, and went to the hospital that night. I ended up with a minor concussion, a really banged up knee, and a little bit of hurt pride. But after that, we drove all the way back to Minnesota, which just went straight through. And I was kind of trying to think about what I was going to do with it. I pretty much figured that insurance was going to total it. Both engine covers were completely smashed. The tank was pretty smashed. The forks were very, very destroyed. Handlebars I thought were bent. Controls were all messed up. Lots of small stuff. Radiator was destroyed. So I kind of figured that insurance was just going to total it, because that's usually what happens with crash bikes. And I was trying to decide whether or not I was going to buy it back or not. The thoughts that were going through my head was, can I make it into like a race bike, like a track bike? Or should I rebuild it for the street? Or should I just let them take it? I don't know. So after a couple months of messing around with insurance, they did decide to total it. And I did decide to buy it back. Ended up getting the bike back and about $4,500 on top of it, which was very nice. And over this last winter, I pretty much completely rebuilt it. I took apart the forks myself and completely redid those. Installed new engine covers. Inside was just asphalt and road paint and mud and dirt and water. So I took off the oil pan, the engine covers, and a bunch of other parts of the engine, and just sprayed brake clean and stuff in there. Ran it a bunch of times, changed filter, and it hasn't broken on me yet, so it must be working okay. So some of the 3D printed stuff that I made, we can start here, is this brake reservoir mount. Normally, the brake reservoir mounts to the rear pegs, but I don't really carry passengers very often, and they kind of just get in my way because I got really big feet. And so I made this to hold the rear brake reservoir. Pretty clean, and you can normally find them online for like literally $100. And I made that for probably 30 cents. So that's very nice. Next thing I made is these turn signal mounts. Pretty nice. They fit perfectly into this little area here, and just fit the turn signal right on there. Hold it really, really sturdy. Nice. And then we have the speedometer mount. Started off, it took about 10 prints to really dial it in, because it's a pretty complicated piece, but it ended up being really, really sturdy. And I'm pretty happy with it. It looks good, nice and clean, and really, I don't know, kind of under the radar. Then I also made carbon fiber windshield for it. This was just before the crash. Held up great in the crash. A couple scratches on it, but no cracking or anything, with all the weight of the bike on it. So I was pretty happy with that at the end of it. And it looks pretty clean. I like it. So after the crash, there was quite a bit of damage. We'll start here at the back. First thing, still damaged, is my rear subframe. It's bent downward and it's very hard to bend back. I've tried a few times now. So for now I'm just gonna leave it. It just makes the seat a little bit hard to get off and it looks kind of annoying, but whatever. Then my rear brakes were leaking. Don't know why they were leaking, but I just took off the banjo bolt, flipped over the copper washers, and now it doesn't leak anymore. Then the engine covers, they had both either cracked or just scraped all the way through. This one on the right side, the clutch cover, ended up having a ton of asphalt and road paint and dirt, like I said before, in it. So that took a lot of cleaning. That was probably the worst part, was cleaning it out. Ended up having to take the oil pan off, had to do new gaskets for everything. So that was pretty annoying. Next up, the radiator. The radiator that was on the bike originally, completely sheared in half. It actually looked pretty cool, but really unusable. So I bought this one on eBay for a little less than $100. Kind of sucks, doesn't mount right, doesn't fit right, but it keeps it cool so far, so that's good. Next, the handlebars. They got pushed backward, so I loosened the perches and I just pushed them back forward. It's pretty easy to fix that. Both of the levers are completely smashed up, but for now I'm just gonna run them because they still work. And then the forks at the front. The right fork had a huge dent in it, so deep that it couldn't compress or rebound at all. The suspension was just completely frozen at that spot. And so I had to completely rebuild it. And so I ended up just doing both of them. So So I bought some new outer fork tubes on eBay again. Took them off. That was a pretty long process. Had to make a couple tools, had to buy a couple tools. But I got the job done and it turned out pretty good. They are leaking now because I reused the seals, so don't reuse seals in the future. So every single piece of plastic on the bike either had a scratch, a ding, a dent, or a crack in it. And so I decided to go over it all with a nice white vinyl wrap. It was my first time ever wrapping anything. And I think it turned out pretty good. I went in pretty blind, just a couple YouTube videos to help me. I think I bought about 6 or 7 feet of vinyl wrap and just some knifeless tape, and that worked out pretty well. The biggest thing I learned from it is that it's pretty forgiving, that you can mess up a part entirely. It's got a huge wrinkle in it, air bubbles, and you can just peel it right back up, give it a bunch of heat from a hairdryer or a heat gun, and put it right back on, it's fine. So that was pretty nice. It takes a lot of time. If you're patient, you can make anything look good with vinyl wrap, honestly. Way before the crash, I did a retrofit for the headlight with an HID bulb. Very, very happy with how it turned out. I bought it from Morimoto, the retrofit source for their website. And yeah, it was a kind of a process. You gotta put it in the oven, take it apart, you gotta drill a couple things for the high beams. But it turned out pretty good. Yeah, lots of different stuff. And pretty happy with it. It's been riding now for about 500 miles or so since I rebuilt it, with no major problems. The forks are leaking, so that's kind of a problem. But I'm just gonna keep riding it until I really need to fix them. For now, I kind of just want to keep it clean. I have a second bike, CBR 600RR, and for now I kind of want to make that into a track bike. I'm not really making any heavy plans with it, but just make it a little more track friendly. So yeah, for now, at least for like next year or so, I want to keep it pretty clean, pretty stockish still like it is. Eventually I do want to do suspension upgrades. That's pretty common with these. The forks are kind of junk on them. Like I said before, it's just like driving a Cadillac. So I want to make it a little bit sportier. Same with the rear. Make it a little bit sportier. Then eventually, probably an exhaust, tune, just pretty common motorcycle stuff to just kind of pep it up a little bit. But not a whole lot really needs to be done to it. I'd like to make it more touring friendly perhaps in the future, maybe in the way long future, making saddlebag mounts and stuff like that. Cruise control maybe, just fun stuff like that. But for now, it's just kind of my baby. It's just like the thing that I'm always gonna have in my garage. Once again, I'm Tyler. If you want to check out my bike some more, follow me on Instagram. Thanks for watching.